Bescheid.
Live, everybody. Hey, welcome to Red TV and Conversation. I'm Peter Clarke, and thanks for tuning in. So appreciate you being here, especially if you're here for the first time. If you're here for the first time, welcome. Thank you for being here. We so appreciate you. And if you've been here before, you already know what you're in for. So I already appreciate that very, very, very much. We are just, hey, you know what Red TV is all about. We're here to lift all the boats. That's what we're trying to do. Tell great stories. Talk about people who are just doing amazing things in the world. Look at that guy over there. We'll chat with him in a second, and it's just amazing. The subjects today we're going to touch upon, we're just scratching the surface, okay? If it feels like we're rushing, listen, it's just one of maybe a series of conversations. Listen, there's so much to talk about. I could take any one subject. I'm going to be speaking with this gentleman, and we could do multiple shows about them. So big subjects, big ideas, big topics, and I'm glad that you're here with us. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. If you're watching live, if you're watching on replay, that's fine too. You know, here's the sales pitch. There's only one little sales pitch here. This is it. If you like what you see, like and share it with your network. You know, let's spread good, positive stories out there. People that are doing great in the world, social impact, people that are, look, all the things. Right? Look at that guy over there. You see that? Social impact, humanitarian philanthropist. That's what we're talking about. We want to lift all the boats, raise all the boats. So please share it with your network and so on. We got to jump right to the conversation because there's so much to talk about. This guy's just unbelievably super cool. Like I met him through another guest that came on our show, and so there was a connection point there, and I reached out to him, and then blah blah blah, and then a few months later, here we are. We're going to be chatting and stuff, and you should see who this guy hangs out with. You know, just saying. I don't know what he's doing with me. I love that. I appreciate his time. That is for sure. But let's just run through it real quick. Just Google the name. That'll probably be the easiest way to learn all this, but I do want to give him a proper introduction if I can here. You know, Jay is an internationally renowned social impact entrepreneur. Get it listed over there, as you can see. Social impact entrepreneur, humanitarian, trained lawyer. We will not hold that again. Too many jokes, too easy. Leadership strategist. That's the most important thing. He works with leaders from around the world on the for-profit, non-profit, on the political side. He's up and down every vertical that you can think of and so on. He's immersed himself in global human rights causes for over 2 decades, and he's very well known for the Rosenzweig. See, I got to get that right. Rosenzweig Report on equality. Really, really important work, and we're going to talk about that as well. We're going to talk about he is chair. He's chair of the board for the 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 Center for Human Rights. That's another thing I want to talk about as well. So we're going to dig into that. He's been everywhere. New York Times, Fast Company, Guardian, BNN, Globe and Mail, Toronto Star. And guess what now? Red TV. Now he's on Red TV. Please, everybody, it is my honor to have him here today and spend time with us. Jay Rosenzweig, how are you?
Hi, Peter. Great to see you. Great to see you. Looking forward to chatting.
Oh, man, we got so much to talk about. Fellow musician in the house right there,
yeah,
everybody.
Man. I want to hear more about your music.
Well, we're going to talk about yours later on today, so don't you worry. That's coming. I got some surprises for you. I got lots of surprises for you. Always got to start by, first of all, thanking you and so on, and got to ask, I know how important your family is to you. I read in a Forbes magazine where you said straight out, nothing more important in my life than my family, my wife, and my kids. So everyone else healthy? Everyone okay?
Everyone's great. Thank you. Super grateful. Everyone's kind of doing their thing. Everyone's where they should be. So all good.
I think that's so important because I know that is something that's super important to you and should be super important for all of us. Your home and your family life and all those kinds of things. I've seen some pictures of your family and your kids and all that kind of stuff. Very cool stuff. We're going down that path today too, just so you know. Lots to talk about here. You've traveled to the Ukraine. Your work with human rights. Your work with business leaders and global leaders in the political world and the nonprofit world. There is so much to touch upon. But to put things in general context so we can move into that, if you can, just talk a little tiny bit, if you can, about your company and literally what you do and then how that has moved you into these other verticals. But talk about your company first and then we'll put that in the context of how you spread that out into other verticals in the world.
Sure. So my company, Rosenzweig Company, is a talent strategy, leadership strategy business. And we help organizations, large and small, to design, build, and attract world-class teams. But to rewind, just by way of context, I'm Canadian by background. I was born and raised in Montreal. I studied at McGill. You alluded to the fact that I'm a trained lawyer. I studied philosophy and law at McGill, and met a really important mentor named 𝗟𝗏𝗃𝗲𝗏, who's an international human rights champion at the law school. He was a professor there. He's well known for having represented people like Nelson Mandela back in the day, and he went on to become Canada's Attorney General and Minister of Justice, where he enacted all kinds of progressive laws and freed more people who were wrongfully convicted in 1 year, more than any of the previous ministers combined. And if you fast forward to today, I'm the chair of his International Human Rights Board called the 𝗟𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏 Center for Human Rights. And through that, was able to make my way to Ukraine to help the administration and continue to do so and continue to call out the Russian Federation for many breaches of justice. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell, but obviously happy to dive in a lot deeper to all the things that you mentioned and more.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you putting that, and that is beautiful because I do want to go down that road. It's a very important subject matter. We dance around it in regular daily conversations. These are big issues, but I think I've heard you speak enough, and I've read enough about what the things that you talk about. I think it's a great platform for us to be able to have this kind of conversation, to always trying to figure out how does it matter to the individual? How does it bring it back to the average person? Why does it matter to me? And why should I be worried about those things? That's the kind of things we're going to touch about today. I have to ask this question of you because I know that you deal with, you're in contact with leaders from, really big leaders around the world, in business and nonprofit, politics and so on. So you're around leadership a lot, and that's a meme over the last, I'm going to say 5 to 10 years, certainly the last 5, where we're talking about leadership and maybe the lack of it and so on. So I have to ask you this question to you because you spend so much time with them. What is leadership to you? What does that mean to you, leadership?
So leadership means, first of all, being able to transcend beyond your own selfish material needs, which is very important for all of our survival, but being able to transcend that and to understand that in order to live a fulfilling life, it's important to impact and give to others. And very often through the actions that you take and through the spirit that you give off, people will naturally be inspired and want to follow you. Socrates once said that you need to beware of those who crave leadership. I think leadership is something that comes very naturally, and the people that have followings are not necessarily going out and looking for it. It just happens naturally because of the way that they are.
That alone is fascinating because there's a common meme out there that you can obviously teach leadership. You can teach leadership skills and so on. Do you think it's more innate, or do you think you really can learn? Obviously, you can learn skills and how to be a better communicator and those kinds of things. Is it more innate than actually learning?
I think it's possible to provide people the framework to understand really what life is, as opposed to the psychological drama that you might have going on in your head, which isn't really an existential reality. And once you have that kind of understanding and you're able to realize that we know so little, then you have that longing to understand the world in a much deeper way. And if you have that kind of perspective on truly what life is about, you then have the ability to become a leader in your own right. So it's a matter of, people always ask about how can you overcome an inferiority complex or a superiority complex or a rich complex or a poor complex. What I always say is it's all the same. It's getting rid of the complex in the first place that's important. It's more about understanding the world with a level of clarity rather than confidence, because confidence without clarity can be a very, very dangerous thing. And we see that in many world leaders right now.
Right. And that's where I was kind of alluding to and going in that direction. You spend so much time with people like that, and we're going to show some pictures of people that you've had these close connections with, for sure. What do you think the greatest hurdle is right now? Like today, here we are. We're tailing off into the end of 2022, going into another year very soon. What's the greatest hurdle to leadership today? What do you think that is?
I think the bottom line is, if each and every individual can work on their own sort of inner engineering, if you will, and really get to the core of understanding that no matter what comes at you, you're able to handle it properly, because much of our experience comes from within. It's truly, and I know it's much easier said than done, it's truly a choice if we realize that our world is really from within, to understand that we have a choice between misery and joy. That if each and every one of us works more deeply on our inner joy and our inner peace, then we can then have a framework for external peace as well. Because how many truly joyful people in the world wish to harm others? If you're truly joyful, you'd have no motivation or desire to hurt another brother and sister on the planet. So I think we need to be a lot more introspective, really.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I've seen some people that you just recently spoke to somebody that I'm a big fan of. I'm going to show that later on as well, a little bit. I asked this. I spoke just recently to Jean Olwang, who is the president or the CEO, the founding CEO of Virgin Unite, on that side of the Virgin brand. And she just wrote a beautiful book about partnering and this idea of how these large global issues that we deal with really requires a special partnership in a sense of, and she interviewed people from all kinds of amazing verticals of partnering with each other. For example, the elders, where, and I know you love music, so where Peter Gabriel and Richard Branson came together and started the elders and got Nelson Mandela. I know you know that story, so everybody check out the elders. So that, for example, the partnering of that. I want to ask you a similar question to what I asked Jean in that sense. What do you think is the biggest challenge right now when it comes to finding partnerships? What is the biggest challenge out there that you see that in order for us to partner with the right people, whether it's business, nonprofit, government? What's the biggest challenge for partnering?
I think it's important to seek out individuals who are willing to listen and not talk past one another. It's very, very important to have a sense of empathy for another individual or group's pain, experience, whether irrational or rational, but to give others the opportunity to speak out and express really whatever their grievance might be, and have that same open dialogue with anybody that you're looking to achieve peace and partnership with. And I think that's really the framework. At the end of the day, it's really quite simple, but I find many individuals in our world are not truly listening. They might be hearing you, but not truly listening. And if you have that skill, which is something unfortunately a lot of people don't have, then you'll be able to achieve tremendous partnerships.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about this idea of we're speaking and we're communicating, it seems, but are we really listening sometimes? And are we just waiting to respond? You know, that idea of
Exactly.
just sitting to wait and respond and so on. Let's jump to your human rights. We touched on it earlier, the passion for that, and use your voice for it today. So first of all, thank you for doing that. Thank you for always using your voice to talk about human rights and adding your voice to that world, if you will. Where does that come from, my friend? Where did what event was there? One specific thing that triggered you to say, you know what, I need to speak out about human rights in general? Where did that come from?
Well, I came from a background that I'm really grateful for. Grew up in a neighborhood called 𝗟𝗏𝘃𝗏 in Montreal. My parents were very, very welcoming people. We never had an alarm. We never had a lock on the door, and we were always welcoming people into our home from all different walks of life. And I think that really informed me and inspired me and opened my eyes to accepting people of all different backgrounds. And then I did have many, many great mentors through the years, including during my days in philosophy at McGill, where I did my undergrad, and then Professor Kotler in the law school, and learned a lot from Professor Kotler himself. I once asked him, really being inspired by all the work that he did, that how he would look at those cynical or even indifferent individuals who would say that it's very, very difficult as an individual to truly make an impact. And he urged me to look at and listen to the words of the great sage Maimonides, who encouraged us to look at the world as if it is half good and half evil. And if you look at it that way, and I tell my kids this now, one good deed, whether it be helping an elderly person to cross the street, or calling a grandparent to say hi, or helping a friend with homework, that one good deed could tip the scale from evil to good. So in that sense, it's as if we have, each and every one of us, a cosmic opportunity to tip the balance and change the world for the better. And I've always reminded myself of that wisdom whenever I, had some sort of setback along the way on the path to trying to do better for the world.
I've never heard that expressed like that before. I appreciate
Mm.
that. It's a beautiful visual with the idea. We always wonder, like, again, what matter does it if I'm thinking good thoughts? What matter is it if I open the door for somebody? We wonder if our smallest kindness, our smallest random acts of kindness make a difference. And I love the idea of what you just said. If we think of it as being balanced, maybe our little addition to that could tip the scales. Let's talk a little bit about the Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. I know you're the chair there, and that's a big passion for you. I want people to understand a little bit more about that. Tell us a little bit about the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, if you can, so people can tune into that. I got the website along the bottom there. Love to learn a little bit more about that as well.
Absolutely. So the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights has a number of pillars to it. One is the combating of the global trend toward authoritarianism, which is a big issue in this day and age. And we can give you many examples of authoritarian regimes who are wreaking havoc in our world today. Protecting media freedoms, which is another very, very important issue in this day and age. Representing political prisoners. There are many political prisoners all around the world that we're helping to defend and to hopefully secure freedom for. The Nelson Mandelas of today, if you will. And the prevention of genocide is another pillar, and ultimately combating racism and hate in all its forms wherever it might manifest itself. So I'm super proud to have been asked by Professor Kotler to join the board and ultimately to become the chair of the board, which is what took me, for example, to Ukraine about 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Right. I saw a lot of that, and I'm going to jump to that in a second to expand on that, because I've been speaking to, it's so top of mind. It is so in our face today. And for us to not continue to have these conversations is one thing. For someone like you to actually take the initiative to go there is something else. So I heard a little bit about your story. I want you to share a little bit about that. Let's just, again, for why, again, would we care about this right this second? It seems that, anti-Semitism, and I'll ask you a question about that in a second, but it is on the rise. Our languaging is showing it on social media. I don't know where to start and end with that, but I want to know why you think we need to really pay attention and care about this as the individual, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in South Africa, Australia, doesn't matter where you are. Why do we need to care about it as individuals?
Well, it's important for all of us as a community of nations to pay attention to any atrocities like the ones that we're seeing play out today in Ukraine. We have all come together post World War II and pledged that we would never allow, for example, to have a genocide happen again. That's the Genocide Convention. And included in the Genocide Convention, as we mentioned in one of our papers that we presented to the Ukrainian administration, is not only the act of genocide, but incitement to genocide in and of itself is a violation of the Genocide Never Again Convention. And it's very clear through state media and the like that Putin and his team are inciting genocide, and it's a duty upon all nations. We have a duty to prevent. It's a duty of all nations to prevent future genocides, and it's a moral obligation when a democratic sovereign nation is randomly invaded, that we need to come to help, because what happens next? Ukraine first, and then Poland, and who knows which other countries. This kind of thing has to stop in its tracks as soon as possible and as definitively as possible.
Yeah, I'll share something with you that I've often said this, and I think you can. This is certainly within the realm of what your normal conversations are. Anytime I see people suffering around the world to, like you said, injustice and genocide and these kinds of things, I always wonder myself, why is the world? And I'm just speaking out. Here's my thought process. I'm thinking, wow, we're sitting back and we're actually sacrificing these people because we don't want to upset the entire global balance here for some reason. Ukraine is a perfect example of that right now. And I always think to myself, and Jay, maybe this resonates with you, when are they going to sacrifice me? I wonder. When is it my turn where they're going to sacrifice? And I'm reaching out to the world to ask for help. And people just sit back and go, you know what? That's not part of the geopolitical decision-making right now. So you're just going to have to sit back and endure that. I understand completely what you mean by that thought process about this idea that we all have to individually stand up about it. I want to bridge this to anti-Semitism, because I know that you're again another beautiful voice out there bringing this very touchy stuff. It's still sensitive to this day. I can't believe that we're still continuing with this sentiment, that the idea that it's a sensitive subject. I recently just saw Jon Stewart talking about Dave Chappelle's monologue on Saturday Night Live recently, and he's going into that world of speaking about the Jewish community and so on. And again, no matter your ideas of politics and religion and these kinds of things, the conversation is still there. And he was, they were talking about it. I want to talk about your passion for this. Why is anti-Semitism on your radar, and why should it be on mine? Why should it be on all of ours?
To your point, even about Ukraine, your point of we need to be one another's keepers, I believe it was a priest who had this famous saying that first they came for the Jews, talking about the Holocaust, and then they came for this group, and then they came for the following group, and then they finally ultimately came for me, and there was no one to defend me because everyone else was gone and no longer able to defend themselves. So we're all one another's keepers, and anytime there's any kind of hate or atmosphere of hate or discrimination, it's really not good for anybody, and it foments something much larger, which transcends any one people. And sadly, throughout thousands of years of history, it often begins with the Jews. And I think that a lot of individuals don't truly understand the danger of these tropes, whether subtle or not. These bizarre notions that Jews control everything.
That's literally what John was talking about last night, by the way. This idea, and he was talking about whether it's Hollywood, whether it's politics, whether it's global monetary banking systems. But continue your point. That's exactly what he was talking about. This ideology out there that the Jewish community controls, purposely, intentionally controls all of these things.
It's utterly bizarre. A lot of people don't realize that there are many people in the Jewish community who live below the poverty line, like any other community. When the Jewish community arrived in North America, they were shut out of many institutions, including many universities. It's very well documented that there was, even at the highest, most prestigious university, Harvard, there was a Jewish quota. In other words, there was only a tiny percentage of Jews that were allowed into the university. There were signs, no Jews or blacks allowed. Often no Jews, blacks, or dogs allowed. The Jewish community was shut out of the banking world and the corporate world. So very often out of necessity, they became entrepreneurs. And built businesses of their own. But to have this notion that somehow the Jewish people are controlling the world, it's absolutely bizarre, and it's based on an underlying ugly hatred. And these kinds of things need to be stamped out, especially during times of insecurity, whether it be economic insecurity or otherwise, because we've seen the dangers of hate. The Supreme Court of Canada a number of years ago, in a case called 𝗟𝗄𝗄, which Professor Kotler intervened in a 5-4 decision, ruled in favor of upholding the Canadian hate propaganda speech laws in the Criminal Code of Canada. And in that majority decision, I think it was Chief Justice Dixon, described how the Holocaust didn't begin with the gas chambers. It began with words. These are the chilling realities of history. So we need to be very, very vigilant in that regard.
Yeah, big subjects, important conversations to have. Important to have them at the local level, right in your home, right in your neighborhood, right in your community centers, right? And this is the thing. Sometimes we think these are all just giant global platform conversations, and they're not. So thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you a little bit about this. There's so much to talk about, my friend. We could take any one of these things, but just touch on this one as well. I know this is important to you. That leads to what you just talked about, where there are signs of Jews and blacks not allowed, these kinds of conditions in the past. The Black North Initiative. Talk a little bit about that here in Canada and why that one resonates with you as well.
So I'm very proud to be a board member on the Black North Initiative, which was founded by Wes Hall, a very successful business person here in Canada. And it was formed in the aftermath of the George Floyd murder and tragedy. the idea of the Black North Initiative is to reverse systemic racism, systemic anti-Black racism. And we've gotten hundreds of companies to sign a pledge to do better in terms of Black executives amongst their leadership ranks. We've raised millions of dollars through the banks and government to invest in affordable housing programs and mentorship programs. And the work continues. And in my capacity as chair of the board of the Raoul Wallenberg Center and board director of the Black North Initiative, I've pulled together the organizations in common cause against anti-Black hate as well as anti-Jewish hate. And we came out with a joint statement in that regard about a year or so ago and sent out a press release, and then had a follow-on gathering of communities in common cause against all forms of hate and discrimination, including the Asian community and the Muslim community and the indigenous community. And I co-wrote a piece in Arianna Huffington's Thrive magazine, right, along with Wes Hall, against the dangers of anti-Semitism. And we just released a statement against anti-Semitism throughout social media, and are about to sign an MOU between the Raoul Wallenberg Center and the Black North Initiative to help one another with a whole bunch of commitments that we're working to complete probably as of today.
Fantastic. Again, it's the sentiment, the spirit of these these initiatives that they sometimes sound like they're very exclusive from one another, when in reality they're just mirrors of each other, are they not? I mean, when you think about
precisely.
it, they're just exactly that. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. You mentioned Ukraine. I think it's so important. I want to talk about your trip to Ukraine.
Sure.
People have been, again, it's in the news, and you know what, sadly, I find that it's falling farther and farther from the headlines. So it means that people are, again, getting to that point where we're like any major issue in the world, we get sort of desensitized to it. Talk about your visit to Ukraine. Why, first of all, why was it so important that you go? I knew it took days to get there and days to get back, just to stay for a couple days. So very difficult to get into a war zone, as anyone can imagine. But to put yourself in that situation, obviously there's a passion there. You have a family. We started the show talking about how much you loved your family. So you obviously put yourself in a position where you went into a war zone, if you will. Talk about the visit, why it was important to you, and what did you learn from that we need to hear from your experience?
I felt, look, this is the eyes of the world have been on Ukraine, rightly so. Who would have ever imagined in 2022 that a sovereign nation in the middle of Europe would be invaded? And to the extent I can play a role in tipping the arc, to the earlier discussion that we had, tipping the arc into a positive direction, I thought really, if I had the opportunity to go, it wasn't something that I could pass up. So we did the arduous travel to get to Ukraine. It wasn't that bad. It was just very long. Yeah. 9 hours to get to Warsaw, 4 hours to drive to the border, another 8 hours to get to Kyiv. But we were able to meet with the administration and present to them a lot of the work that the Raoul Wallenberg staff so artfully put together, including, as I mentioned earlier, the analysis of the Russian Federation's breaches of the Genocide Convention. They drafted statutes, which I presented, for the establishment of a special tribunal to investigate crimes of aggression. UN resolutions were drafted, as well as a 10-point action plan designed to be implemented, really, and recommended to be implemented by the community of democracies. And the work was received very well. A lot of the work has been integrated. In fact, you may have seen a couple of days ago, President Zelensky presented a 10-point action plan to the G20. And as a follow-on to that, it was the United Nations General Assembly 2 weeks after my trip, and I was asked to co-host and potentially curate an event or two for the First Lady of Ukraine in New York, because she came for the UNGA. And we had a couple of really wonderful events where she unveiled her foundation, including one at the Met Gala, the Met in the Lincoln Center in New York, where a number of politicians and luminaries came, including Hillary Clinton and the Secretary of State of the United Kingdom. The Prime Minister of Ukraine was there as well. Some celebrities like Jimmy Fallon and Matt Damon and Brooke Shields, and just a lovely, lovely event. And then the next morning, I was able to help secure a private breakfast at JP Morgan, hosted by Jamie Dimon and his wife, and a number of their high net worth clients, and some other artists and luminaries as well. And I can't divulge too many details there, but some generosity was offered in terms of helping Ukraine with their ultimate reconstruction and things of that nature.
Yeah, certainly. Again, just incredible groups of people, minds that are coming together. Things that we don't normally hear in the news. Obviously, we're privy to knowing that there's a lot of people that care behind the scenes that are trying to bring minds and hearts together, and also the capital side of it, which is basically bringing resources together so that again, who would ever dream that we would have to have this conversation of having a European nation invaded illegally, immorally, in 2022. It's mind-boggling. Let me ask you this question about that Ukraine trip for you, though. What did you pull from it when you were physically there on that ground? You knew that missiles could come anytime, and you're seeing the faces of people who that's where they're living, and we get the joy of living in Canada and have this privilege of doing it. What did you pull from that visit personally, by being there?
Well, I was further energized to do more. It was a deeply inspiring trip. We also made our way to 𝗟𝗏 Yar, which is a Holocaust memorial a little bit outside of Kyiv. And it wasn't lost on us, the irony, if you will, that in September of 1941, and we were in Ukraine in September 2022. In September of 1941, in 2 days, 33,000 Jews were massacred by the Nazis in the most horrific, against the backdrop of the most horrific genocide in history, the greatest criminal conspiracy in history, that were sitting on this very soil that was attacked by a genocidal regime. The memorial itself, 𝗟𝗏 Yar, was damaged in the attack. And here I am representing the Raoul Wallenberg Center, whose namesake, Raoul Wallenberg, saved more lives in the Holocaust as an individual than any one nation. He saved 100,000 Jews, and he had no skin in the game. As Professor Kotler describes him, one man with enough courage to act and compassion to care transformed history and gave up his life for it. He disappeared, never to be found again. And I'll mention one more thing that I found extremely inspiring, and that was speaking with the leadership of the Ukrainians, including Andriy Yermak, the chief of staff to Zelensky, the head of office of the president, in the palace. Every few sentences began with, "When we emerge victorious, when we win, ... And this wasn't false bravado. You could tell these individuals are supremely assured that victory will come. It's just a matter of when. And I indicated to them that we and the Canadian people in the world, all good-meaning people in the world, are behind them, and we'll do whatever we can to help.
Fantastic. I'm going to check into. Thank you for sharing that. Very inspiring. Just again, your personal experience. What are you pulling away from it, and why we should be all paying attention to this? I'll definitely find out who a little bit more about this is. Jay, DM me, starting perfect here in UK, an amazing. So something to do with the. We'll check this LinkedIn user. So thank you for being here. Thanks to
Perfect.
everybody in the comments and stuff. This is the whole point of us connecting here and raising awareness. And right away, I need to smile a little bit because I know we're talking about some really big subject matters. And at the same time, we both have a passion for music and joy and fun and uplifting people. So I want to make sure that everyone hears this message. The things we're talking about right now don't have to feel heavy and hard on our heart. What we start with is this: a dialogue and communication, and realizing that we're all, as you said so well earlier, Jay, which is we're all our brothers and sisters keepers, and just to be aware and to have these conversations. That's what I feel my purpose is. I know you feel the same way about that. So I want people to know that, please don't stay here and hang out. We got to talk about music yet. We're not even getting into music. I do need to ask you this question because this is something that's on my mind because we're talking about a giant subject such as genocide. I had the privilege of going to Rwanda several years ago, and I know you know that story there in 1994, and even Bill Clinton to this day said that that's his biggest regret of not taking action with the UN and the US at that time in 1994 for the genocide. For those who don't know, please Google Rwanda 1994. You'll understand more about that. And basically in Rwanda, it was all about this idea that you couldn't put everybody in prison. You couldn't lock everybody up. You had to go through this process called 𝗟𝗂𝗃𝗃, which is basically forgiveness. And this idea of forgiveness. And that's been a reoccurring theme in my own personal life about being able to forgive yourself for things that you either done or maybe you, whatever the case would be, forgiving others and so on. I want to ask this giant question. It's big, my friend, so get ready. It's about forgiveness. What do you think that relationship is? What's the relationship? Because you have a global perspective. This is why I'm asking you. The relationship between forgiveness and humanity's future. What do you think that is? The idea of forgiveness and where we need to go.
So before I get into that, I wanted to mention that I remember the Rwandan tragedy and genocide very, very well. Another example of a breach of the Never Again Convention, the Genocide Convention. We all knew and didn't act. And I remember working as a summer student as a research assistant for Professor Kotler at the time, and he was calling Kofi Annan and the world leaders and begging them to act, and they didn't. Right. So forgiveness is one of the most important things that we could achieve. There's no coincidence that I named my son Joseph. The story of Joseph to me is a very, very inspiring one. Here's a guy who was thrown in a pit by his brothers, left for dead. They told his dad that his youngest son, the apple of his eye, was dead. He ends up rising above, he ends up falsely imprisoned, rising above it all, becoming prime minister of Egypt. And then decades later, his brothers come to him, not even knowing it was him, asking for help. And he had nothing but forgiveness in his heart, and he helped them. And you look at a modern day Joseph like Nelson Mandela, who spent decades on Robben Island, imprisoned for year after year, decade after decade, and emerging out of prison intact, physically and emotionally and psychologically, able to lead a country, and to in fact have in his cabinet those who imprisoned him. Because the idea is, if we don't forgive, we remain prisoners in our own mind. And I think mental imprisonment might be the worst form of imprisonment, as horrible as physical imprisonment might be. So in order to advance humanity, I think forgiveness is really the only way. That doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean learning from the lessons of the past. It doesn't mean naivety in negotiating with the individual across the table from you, and having that healthy level of skepticism. But really, lack of forgiveness is only a way of punishing oneself. You're not punishing the other when you have that bitterness inside of you. In fact, modern science tells us that when we have anger and bitterness, or we're in a fit of rage, as an example, you do a blood test, you'll see your chemistry is completely out of whack. So you're poisoning yourself with a lack of forgiveness. You're not poisoning anyone else.
It also resonates with me for that reason. Starting from that reason, I feel in my own life that many health issues and things that I'm personally dealing with internally have to do with just what you said there, is the fact that our inability to forgive yourself or another situation that happened in your life shows up as literally as toxin in your body. Exactly. And it'll shut your body down. And I know that I've lived through this. It's something I'm going to talk about more in the future, but I'm passionate about this idea of understanding how that plays in all walks of our lives, personally, in business, politically, geopolitically, all these things. This idea of forgiving, and how that plays out. So I appreciate what you said there, because it's literally poison that runs through your body, and it is important for us to move forward for humanity. So thank you for sharing that. I want to ask, I want to mention this, the Rosenzweig. I got it in my head some another way. That's from music. We'll talk about that in a second.
You got it perfectly.
I got it. Rosenzweig.
Well, you've obviously got a good ear.
I appreciate it. I've heard you say it a few times. So I'm saying I got to make sure I'm saying it just like my friend. Your report. I want to talk about that. Just a quick little shout out to your report. That's annual report. I'm going to put it up right now. Tell everyone a little bit about your annual report that comes out, and why we should be tuning in and reading through that.
So I studied women's rights over the years. We saw Professor Kotler turn our Supreme Court into the most gender representative in the world. He was the first man in the Women's Caucus. So here I am in business in 2006, thinking to myself, okay, let me look at another area of women's rights and measure the status of women in business. And in Canada, as in the United States and other major jurisdictions, all public companies have to disclose the compensation of roughly their 5 top executives. So I decided in 2006 to look at the 100 largest publicly traded companies in Canada and measure what percentage of, let's say, the top 500 roles were held by women. And I thought the numbers would be low, but I didn't realize they'd be that low. In 2006, the number was 4.6%. And it was right then and there that I decided that I'm going to continue doing this study year after year until hopefully one day I work my way out of a job.
Yes.
The good news is the numbers have doubled 17 years later. The bad news is we're still under 10%. So we have a lot of work to do. And as you're showing to our audience, you could see in the early pages of the report, what I've decided to do is bring in influencers from various walks of life to comment, provide quotes, endorsements, etc.
Yes.
For the report, in order to amplify the discussion and galvanize their own communities so that this could be as big a discussion as possible. So as you've been scrolling, you could see many prominent leaders have chimed in on my report, including Prime Minister Trudeau, Mark Cuban, Deepak Chopra, Van Jones, Sheryl Sandberg, Alyssa Milano,
yes,
etc., etc.
And your friend right there, and your friend Wes right there at the top.
There's Wes. There's the founder of Black North, and 𝗟𝗶𝘃𝗲 is on the same page. She's our executive director at the Black North Initiative. So intersectionality is something that I feel is an extremely important and effective way to pull people together, and it's something that I'll continue to push for all of my life.
Fantastic. Everybody, you just have to, all you have to do is Google right there, Rosenzweig, the report. It'll come up as a PDF. I just downloaded it myself. So I've been reading through it and so on. And like you said, having voices that can amplify it, having it part of a regular part of a conversation, and then it falls into all kinds of different verticals of conversation, whether it's human rights, business, leadership, how C-suites, see a leadership, their teams, how they team build and so on. I know you know all that because your business does that. Your business goes out and finds the best candidates for some of the best people in the world. So I know you know this process. But thank you. I wanted to mention that to everybody. I think it's super, super important. Gosh, there's so many things that any one of these things we could just keep talking about. I want to talk about something that I love. I love this. You've been around, you've traveled so much, and you have such a rich knowledge base of just business and philanthropy and giving back and making a difference and so on. So I think it's really important. I want to go through something called reflections. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of reflections here. This is something I love doing because I want to bring up a couple pictures of some people, and then I want you just to kind of comment on it for me. It's really that simple. I just want to see your impression of these pictures and who these people are and these kinds of things. So here we are. We're going through a little bit of reflections. That's what we're going to do right now. So let's start with this beautiful soul. This is how we met, but tell everyone who this is.
So this is 𝗟𝗨𝗏 𝗟𝗏𝗃𝗲, a very, very deep friend, a very dear friend of mine. Really, really wonderful human being, very, very well grounded, deep into meditation and helping others sit down and so that you can rise up is a very deep title for an amazing book that she wrote, and really to me that imbues the notion that each of us really are most powerful when we are still and we block out all the noise. And the amazing work she's done through the pandemic, through the establishment of Pandemic of Love, whose board I sit on, is just unbelievable. She's raised over $60 million for those in need during the pandemic. She was made a CNN hero this past year. And she writes these beautiful articles in Time about the relationships that have been developed between donors and donees and the mutual learnings and enrichments that they've gained by knowing one another. So just an incredibly inspiring and wonderful friend.
See, that's what I'm talking about, everybody. There's an example of the partnering we were just talking about. Two of you coming together like that. Look at this. Look at who you hanging out with there. Look at your button. Where is that? Just give us a one-liner about that. Where was that?
So I helped a dear friend of mine, 𝗟𝗶𝘃𝗃𝗲, start up a global organization called Move the Dial, designed to advance women in tech. And we had invited Ellen to attend one of our events, and so Ellen, of course, would be very partial and supportive of that kind of event and mission. So that's where I met Ellen.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think I recognize her, but this is you were just talking about the foundation, that event we just spoke to earlier in the show. This is from that event in New York, is it not?
So this was at an event in New York, and Secretary Clinton and I had a really wonderful conversation. We actually have a very, very dear friend in common who we spoke about, and we also, of course, spoke about the importance of standing side by side with the First Lady of Ukraine. And of course, Secretary Clinton was not only a senator and a Secretary of Foreign Affairs in the United States, amongst many other things, but she also understands what it is to be a First Lady. So we were very pleased to have her participate in the event and show support to the First Lady of Ukraine.
Absolutely. I recognize this person too. A little bit of influence there. Beautiful. Another powerhouse. I mean, just being in the presence and exchanging ideas must be a wonderful experience for you. Yes.
Yes, it was wonderful to meet Michelle Obama, another First Lady.
Yes. I know, right?
And that was in the context of the Elevate Tech Festival. in Toronto, which attracts over 20,000 people from around the world to celebrate the wonderful city of Toronto and the amazing tech innovation that we have. And the keynote discussion that year, which is a few years ago, was held between my dear friend Claudette McGowan, who's a wonderful executive here in Toronto, and Michelle Obama. And we were able to spend time backstage, and it was great to meet her.
Oh, say the very least. Recognize this guy here in Canada. I know that you said he also participated in adding his voice to the report that we were just kind of cruising through and so on. No matter, I mean, obviously, whoever's in power in Canada, I'm going to say out loud and suggest that it's important for you to have that kind of a relationship if we want to keep going down the road of conversations about human rights and anti-Semitism and all that we spoke about, correct?
Absolutely. And the Raoul Wallenberg Center has a great relationship with Prime Minister Trudeau. Professor Kotler knew his dad, Pierre, quite well, and he's been somewhat of a mentor to Prime Minister Trudeau as well. And Prime Minister Trudeau actually appointed Professor Kotler Canada's special envoy on Holocaust remembrance and anti-Semitism. This picture in particular, I remember, given both of our suits, I remember where it was taken, and that was at an event where I was asked to actually introduce the Prime Minister. So that picture evokes really great memories.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. I love this guy. I'm just going to tell you straight out, and it's not for the reason everyone thinks. Obviously, we love him as an entertainer, an actor, and you know, who doesn't like Jason Bourne or you know, Good Will Hunting, these kinds of things. But his work with water and his philanthropy about water, I just love this. And it looks like, again, it was at the same foundation, but or a foundation event, I'm sorry. But I just love his work with what he does with wells and water and around the world and having those conversations. Tell us about meeting him. Is this a buddy? Is this a hanging out, or just what are we doing here?
Well, we had some good quality time together. He's a class act. You know, Matt comes across as actually a really serious and intense individual. He talked about his water charity and the importance of protecting and helping the Ukrainian people. I offered to help him with his water charity, so hopefully we'll have some more ongoing discussions on that. And I was able to slip in, which he really appreciated, that you know, I found Good Will Hunting to be one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. You know, really, really remarkable, beautiful movie. And imagine, he and Ben Affleck were 26, 27 when they wrote that, wrote that script. I mean, the level of insight in that movie and just the beautiful cinematography, etc. Like, one of my favorite movies literally of all time.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I never get tired of it. It's one of those ones when when you going through the television, where no matter where it is, you'll say, oh, I'll just watch 5 minutes of it, and you watch the rest of it. And the messaging inside of that is absolutely spectacular. There's the group shot right there. So of course a couple first ladies there, and Matt, and
the ambassador, the woman next to me is the ambassador to the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States. Right. And the guy next to her is the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the UK. So yeah, it was really, really a great night, very memorable night, and great to come together in common cause.
I love it. I love it. And there's a picture again of the First Lady. So again, wonderful experience for you to be there. Look at this guy. I mean, who doesn't know a little bit about Deepak? Are you a big fan? I know you're very spiritual. You're very spiritual, and you like that kind of you investigate that. You're curious, those kinds of things. Is he one of those? I know Wayne Dyer is for me. Just to let you know, like Wayne Dyer is a. But I know Deepak plays that role for you as well, correct?
Yeah, I look, I'm a very curious individual. I think the spiritual journey is a never-ending journey. the world is full of infinite possibilities. And Deepak is someone who's become a really dear friend, and the stuff that he writes about and his thoughts, he's now at the stage of what he calls self-realization. I think it's all really, really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And so Deepak and I talk and text regularly. We're looking at combining forces to build some really impactful initiatives together. And I'm really grateful to know him.
Fantastic. Love this guy. I saw a video clip of you exchanging some commentary with him, talking about mental health, wellness, medications, and these kinds of things. Tell me a little bit about your interest in his philosophy. I remember in the video you talked about the idea of working out in your basement and these kinds of things. I thought that was very cool. And
Yeah.
by the way, why that resonated with me, because I found the same thing, is that I started listening to his videos while I'm walking on my treadmill or jogging on my treadmill, walking on my treadmill. I start listening to this guy and I was like, this is awesome. So
It's fantastic.
Isn't it?
It's fantastic. Sadhguru is an incredibly clear thinking individual. Remember, we spoke earlier about how clarity is actually much more important than confidence, because, confidence without clarity is a disaster. Just seeing things as they are, just seeing people as they are. So, one of the notions that he'll offer is that it's important not to look up at people and not look down at people. Just see people as who they are and see the world as it is. It might sound like a simple notion, but I think a lot of people have missed out on that notion. And to understand the differentiation between our psychological dramas that we create, which are not truly existential. That's not life. It's okay to create psychological dramas and the like, but understand that we should be in control of our life. And the things that we can't control are the externalities. But if we're grounded, and as I talked about earlier, if we're at ease and silent within ourselves, we'll be able to handle anything that comes at us. And those are the kinds of notions that Sadhguru describes. A lot of these things I know innately, but he has such an artful and clear way of articulating these universal truths that it sometimes helps me to hear him describe these things so that I can in turn use that to help others.
I couldn't agree with you more. I find that there's so much knowledge in there. And what I like about it, he always tries to bring it back to just common language of exchange, and he has a great sense of humor about it sometimes. He has a great way of expressing those ideas.
That's an important point, by the way, before we get to this, before we get to that next wonderful photo, is really understanding the notion of the simplicity of our world, being able to laugh at our world and not taking our lives too seriously, living our lives with as much intensiveness and consciousness as we possibly can, but at the same time carrying it lightly.
Yeah, he has a way of expressing it that way. And back to your point, we were speaking about some pretty heavy subject matters today, and for some reason we feel maybe we're not supposed to laugh or smile or appreciate film or love music or love concerts, and there's this feeling that we're supposed to be heavy all the time, and it's actually quite the opposite. And
exactly,
a lot of his teachings and his commentary is about this idea that it all starts within. If we can find that peace within, we'll find it, without no doubt about it. That beautiful soul, who is that person?
That's my beautiful wife, who I feel so grateful to be sharing my life with. She's really the rock star of our family, and I just love her more and more each and every day, if that's even possible, which seems so crazy. So that's the love of my life, Renee.
Oh, that's beautiful right there. I found these two people on the internet there, Girl Starter, and I saw you talking together. And what I loved about that little video clip was how you were looking at each other. That must have been a lot of fun to do together. But tell everyone who these beautiful souls are.
So these are my daughters, Sammy and Ali, and I just feel so blessed to have them as my daughters. They're in many ways my best friends, as my other family members are, and just beautiful, beautiful people.
Yeah, that's. I think I heard you in another interview say that someone was, what your hope for them and so on, and your hope was, hey, I just want them to be loving people, just great people on the planet, right? So I think that's a beautiful sentiment to have, for any family member or anyone that we love in our. Who's that guy? Who's that good-looking fellow right there? Look at that guy. Tell me about that little scene right there.
That's my handsome son, Joseph. Really another blessing in my life. Another one of my best friends. He's now a lot bigger than that. He's doubled probably in size since that photo. He's studying engineering right now in his second year.
Wow.
And he's just he's literally one of the most successful people I've ever met. He's just a gem of a guy. And that's a scene from the bar mitzvah party celebration that we had. I decided to, rather than do that, one of the conventional sort of speeches, write a song for him called Right There, Right Here. And surprise him with it at the party and unveil the song live in front of him and the 300 people in the room. And I think it went over quite well. There was barely a dry eye in the room, and I wasn't sure if he'd be embarrassed or uncomfortable about it, but I was fortunate that wasn't the case at all. He had a tear in his eye. He ran up onto the stage and gave me a huge hug, and it was just a great moment for both of us that I will never forget. And your audience, if they went on YouTube and put my name in, would probably be able to easily find the video.
Well, you know what I'm going to do now. Of course, we're going to do that. We're going to talk. You're a songwriter, musician, classically trained pianist when he was a kid between the ages of grade 1 and 5, and beautiful story of very much like me is like, as soon as you start talking theory, I don't want to know. I want to know the feeling. I want to feel it. I want to play.
That's it.
So it's like trying to learn the piano. It's like I terrible student. I'm a terrible piano student, but I love listening to music. Hey, I want to play a little clip of that, and I waited till the end of the show just because, hey, we're going to end on some fun. That is for sure.
Love it.
Just in case the live streaming decides to cut us off for copyright issues, but I'm going to risk it anyway. Seeing I'm talking talking to the person right here. Check this out, everybody. I mean, I was blown away. I was like, are you kidding me? What's he doing? And I was like, and you look like a rock star up there. You're super cool, man. Let's have a look at it. Let's check it out.
Yeah. Daddy's little boy is taking on the world tonight. Daddy's little boy is taking on the world tonight. Yeah. Sing. And I'll always be there. And I'll always be there. Let's go. No matter where I go, you should always know that I'm there, thinking about you today.
I mean, come on. How cool is that? How cool is that? Beautiful thing to have is a passion for music, as I do. So tell us a little bit about why that still resonates with you. That's a beautiful sentiment, by the way. What a great memory to have for the rest of your life.
Thanks, man.
He looked like he enjoyed it. And I bet, like you said, there wasn't a dry eye when I was watching it. So let alone not 6 years later. Why is music such a powerful entity in your life right now?
I just love music. I always have. It's like another level of expression. Certainly you could put lyrics to music, but even the musicality of lyrics and of course the instrumentation and the singing and all the rest of it, it just takes you to another level. I find it's very hard to describe, but music's always been incredibly important to me. I started taking piano lessons like at the age of 5. Quit probably around the age of 10 because I started getting all this written homework, which I didn't want to do, and I had enough homework as it is, and my friends were outside playing street hockey. But took it up again when I was a teenager, when I met this guy Mitch Magnet, who's a dear friend to this day, and we co-write music together. He taught me a different way to improvise, to bang chords, to really be able to play any kind of music if you're given sheet music with chords on top. And in fact, this improvising or improvisational way of playing an instrument is a natural segue into songwriting as well. So we've got dozens of songs that we have together, and just love listening, playing music. I probably hit the keys at least once a day, even to this day.
Yes.
We do a lot of family sing-alongs. My wife loves singing. I think that's probably one of the ways I was able to woo her in the early days. So it's a nice little tool to have in your pocket.
It is. Yes, it is. So I got them back there same way. Like that's why I leave the piano here, because like you said, just in between a phone call or something, you got 30 seconds, you put your fingers there, it just goes somewhere else. So I totally appreciate that. Hey, if we got a couple more minutes, I gotta listen. We got to end with some fun. We were talking some heavy stuff. I hope we can get to do this again, because we're just scratching the surface. There's so many things to be touching upon. It is insane what we could do. But hey, I can't leave without. We got to learn a little bit more about you. Just like that, he's talking about human rights and helping people from around the world and going to the Ukraine, and then he's a singer, songwriter, rock star. I mean, how cool is that when you find out that people are normal, that people do other things like that. So we got to do a quick little thing, just a couple seconds here, a little this or that with Jay. We got to do. All right, got to do a little this or that. That's what we're going to do. I'm just going to say two things, and you pick one, and it'll just give me an insight, a little bit of insight into Jay, what he's thinking. Let's start with this: Iron Man or Spider-Man?
Spider-Man. Oh,
really? Oh, okay. I'm surprised at that. Okay, Beatles or the Stones?
Beatles.
Oh, that was quick. Even though the Stones are still playing? Okay.
Beatles are the standard.
Okay. If I talk to Keith, I'm gonna bring it up. As a Canadian, I got to ask you: Tragically Hip or Blue Rodeo?
Tragically Hip.
I knew you were going to say that. I don't know why. Check those bands out, everybody, if you're watching from around the world. Tragically Hip, Blue Rodeo, Canadian bands. When I come to visit you, or if I come to Toronto soon, we going for Chinese food or Italian food?
Italian.
I love that. If you're traveling, Caribbean, you like the Caribbean or Europe for travel?
Europe.
So less not a beach guy, but you like the history part.
I love the beach, but you can go to a beach in Europe too.
That's good. Hey, good point. All right. Need to know early guy or late guy? Well, you're a musician, so I might know this. Sunrise or sunset?
Oh man, I'm up at all hours. I have to say both.
You've seen them both as a musician, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Hey, to talk a day with peace, about peace, to talk a day about peace. Dalai Lama or President Putin?
To talk a day about peace. That's a really, really tough one. Can't I bring them both together?
Right?
Yeah. Sorry I didn't answer your question perfectly, but I got to bring them together.
You got to bring them together on that. I'd love your take on this. I love these two concepts. No right or wrong here. Hope or freedom?
Freedom.
Do say?
Well, with freedom, you don't need hope. You're free.
Wow. Okay, I've never heard it said like that before. We're setting up for another show. That's fantastically interesting. Okay. All right. I'm just going to leave it there. That's enough. Finish this sentence for me, my fine friend. Finish this sentence. I love my life because
I have the opportunity to live it in the most full-fledged way possible.
Yeah. I mean, living in Canada, I need to say that. I always feel, I joke. It's not even a joke. I always say, I feel like I won the lottery. I feel like I won the birth lottery just to be here. So privileged. So you're absolutely right about that. Jay, it's been such a pleasure to speak with you. I know I've kept you much longer. I hope you can stick around. I just want to say hi to you at the end of when we're done here, but I so appreciate this conversation. Did you have some fun?
I enjoyed it very much. The feeling is mutual, and let's do it again.
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate
Thanks so much.
There's so many comments. The comments, people, thank you for tuning in. I saw someone from the UK said they had to put their kid to bed, so they're loving the conversation. I'll go check all the comments and so on, and if anything comes from that, we'll certainly make sure that Jay gets connected properly with any comments that. Of course, you can reach out to Jay directly. Go to the website. He's on LinkedIn as well. You can check him out that way. Please go in and find some of those reports we talked about. We talked about the annual report there. There's so many things that we dug into. Please do. Google's your friend, everybody. So do that. That is for sure. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it. I'm going to see you on the other side. And everybody else, listen, I so appreciate you being here. It's always good. You know how this ends, everybody. Just be kind out there. That's all you have to do. Just be kind out there, everybody. Just be kind. That's all you have to do. And we'll see you on the other side. Hey, Jay, I'm going to end off with a little clip of a song that I wrote. Hey, because I knew you're a songwriter.
Let's hear it.
So I went down the basement, laid down a couple tracks, threw this idea together. It's not complete. Maybe I can get a songwriter to help me out with that. We'll see you on the other side, everybody. Take care, everybody. We'll see you, Jay. Thanks.
1, 2, 3.